Okay, let's start. Welcome. My name is Marta Grabowska, and I'm here at Centrala Gallery in Birmingham together with the artist Malgorzata Drohomirecka, who painted a series of paintings on the topic of Polonia. And today, on the Independence Day in Poland, we will be discussing the issues of womanhood, representation, empowerment, and self-determination, together with two experts that we invited to this discussion who contributed with their wonderful essays on the topic of this exhibition, for which I thank you. And they are Chowaniec and Izabela Morska. The starting point of this discussion will be the case of Polonia, but we will be discussing and examining examples from across pop culture, art, and politics. We will be talking about the current situation in Poland, and discussing the idea of representation of womanhood in arts and in society today, which was based on, as Malgorzata stipulated in her paintings, from the 19th century representation of women in arts. I would like to just briefly introduce the three people, wonderful women that we'll be discussing today. Malgorzata Drohomirecka is a visual artist. Her practice intertwines painting, printmaking, and film. She studied painting at the Academy of Fine Arts in Gdańsk. After completing her master's degree in 2006, she moved to London, where she's been living and working since. In 2020, she was awarded a scholarship from the Polish Ministry of Culture for the realization of the online project Polonia 2020. About which we will be discussing today. Urszula Chowaniec is a professor at the Andrzej Flecz-Modrzejewski Krakow University in Poland and the research fellow at the UCL School of Slavonic and East European Studies. She is also an author, curator, and art critic. She currently lives in Stockholm. Her research concentrates on Jewish history and Jewish identity in women writing and contemporary lesbian women's writing. And finally, Izabela Morska is one of Polish literature's leading voices. She started out as a poet and performer before expanding into the areas of fiction, non-fiction, and cultural criticism. She holds an MFA in English and creative writing from Mills College in Oakland, California. In 2018, she received the Julian Tuwim Prize for the Life Achievement. In her short stories, as well as longer pieces of fiction and creative non-fiction, Morska embraces neglected and subversive narratives focusing on women, queer, and dispossessed characters, and is prone to creating her own mythologies. And now I would like to quickly just set the background for our discussion for those of you who are watching and don't know anything about Polish history. And then we will start with a couple of questions to Malgorzata, but I encourage questions from the crowd as well as from our two experts. So on November 11th, 1918, after 123 years of foreign occupation, Poland regained its sovereignty. 2 weeks later, Polish women were granted the right to vote, and 2 years after that, they were granted the rights to study in art academies. Great poets, painters, composers, and artists of the time put an effort to keep the Polish culture and language alive while Poland was fighting for its independence while under occupation of three foreign forces. And it was during this time that Matejko, Malczewski, Wyspiański, and other artists created the allegorical formulation for Polonia as a symbol of national martyrdom. And Polonia was a frail, weak woman ready to be sacrificed, as Poland at the time was non-existent and also very weak. This 19th century image of women created by the patriarchal structures objectified female bodies as symbols of broken nature. Poland was among the first countries to achieve women's suffrage, but our mentality was shaped by the and self-victimization. What has actually changed since Wyspiański, Matejko, and the all-male cast of great artists that search for Polish national style in art created their suffering personifications of Polonia? Has the narrative around the female body and femininity shifted at all? And this is going to be the main point of our discussion. And I will start us with first question to Malgorzata, but I encourage both Ula and Izabela to join the discussion. as far as I know, the project Polonia 2020, Małgosia, was your first big-scale figurative project, and I was wondering, why did you start painting this series? Was it out of frustration caused by the situation in Poland in the 21st century? Was it because of your love for historical painting, or maybe something completely different?
Yes, so it's true that this is my first series of figurative painting. Before I was more engaging with abstract painting. I was experimenting with different mediums, screen printing, 60mm analog film. And that series, I think, was mostly, there were like different reasons why I started to think that I would like to engage more in socio-political discourse. Rather than only experimenting with form. And I think that the year 2015 will be always like, for me, that moment when suddenly everywhere in the world, the right-wing populism was started to taking over. It was in Poland, it happened in Poland, it happened simultaneously in different countries. In Poland was Law and Justice, Donald Trump in America, and here we have in England Brexit referendum. So I felt like I have to somehow find myself in that context, that question also about the identity became quite inevitable. Like I had to think, okay, where am I standing, and what can I do as an artist as well to engage in that discourse, because staying, quiet or pretending that nothing happens would feel simply wrong. And then I thought, so what I hate the most about maybe Poland and my identity was that national martyrdom that we soaked with during the school years when we go to cities with children, and that image of broken nation, and that is symbolized by women. So how this affects, I started to try to analyze how this affects our collective imagination, and how much we are still enmeshed in the web of the symbols and references from the times of dependence. And that it's very difficult to detach from the past. And what we see now, this is like that problem, that we are still, our mentality was shaped by history of oppression and self-victimization. And that's, I think, it was like a good ground for that populists now to use the, use it like for their own political gains.
Yes, and in the context of this recent political situations, do you think that Polonia, which is the symbol of the broken nation, the woman, but perhaps today it could be the symbol of others simply, like, a member of the LGBTQI community, or, the immigrant, the refugee, do you think that they wasted their freedom? As per your title, that's quite ambivalent.
Yeah, I think that, those are like two questions in one, I think, because we can think what Polonia symbolizes now at the moment, and did we waste freedom? Now the answer would be, when we see what's going, the situation at the moment, we would say yes, we are at the moment facing realities that maybe we wasted that years of freedom, because it's not given forever, and now who knows where we are heading at the moment. What do you think?
If I can jump in, it's quite. First of all, I wanted to say that it's wonderful to be here and to discuss something which is not so obviously feminist topic, because feminism kind of always traditionally tried to be away from the kind of very hardcore nationalistic discourses, and Polonia is part of those nationalist discourses. But and it feels like it, you know, what you're doing in Polonia's series is to redefine, deconstruct, and try to show what can we do in this very conservative discourses on what's the role of women in the nationalism, within the nationalistic discourses. What is really nice to be here is that you know, in Centrala 3 years ago, within this 100 years anniversary of Polish independence, of Polish women's independence, Polish women's emancipatory movement, we also created a kind of feminist exhibition called 100 Years So What. And I remember when we thought about this title, it was exactly the title of what you're saying, okay, was it wasted? What happened? Why do we still in the situation when the abortion law in Poland is appalling, and and there are still discussion of reinforcement, other restriction, which even though we thought there is no other possibility, when there are women that are threatened and now by this law, because we already have a tragic victim of this oppressive anti-abortion law, when there is anti-gender discourses, that people stop being even ashamed by being openly homophobic, when there is political discourse about LGBT free zones, which feels like even anti-constitutional movement. But we have this in the center of the European context, and we are all stand. And I think what we are today, and when we're discussing Polonia series, is actually out of those complete feeling of being appalled and stunned and don't really know what is happening, and trying to, through deconstruction, to actually understand this situation. But when we say wasted, is it wasted freedom? I have this feeling that it's a little bit like the gesture that tells us, is it women's fault, or it's probably women's fault that they wasted it? And this is what I wanted to say I wanted to be very careful about. I want to, because it's always feeling like, it must be women's fault, and probably they not. And it's, but definitely we need to think what went wrong.
Well, but if you can pick up, perhaps it is women's fault. Why wouldn't we say that do we have to insist that it wasn't? If I return back to 1990s, all the middle-class women who consistently said, I'm not a feminist, but perhaps they supported one cause or another, without thinking for one moment that they actually had an opportunity to do something progressive, or to create a certain livable reality for their daughters and granddaughters. Because we know a group of activists who actually was engaged in this kind of activism, and while they were failing, they were of course also gaining, and just like everybody else, they often had children, family, or girlfriends. But no, these were women who were somehow grounded in various support networks. So it was not impossible to be an activist and an intellectual at the same time, or a person employed at different positions, and an activist to a certain extent. Whereas now it seemed that indeed women traded not only their freedom, but also the freedom of their daughters and granddaughters for some sort of temporary comfort that consisted of mortgage in what was it in Swiss francs and the newest model of a valuable car, because no, certain groups of people actually weren't poor. Economically poor in the 1990s and the odds. We cannot talking about poverty that brings down women around the globe, who in fact have to deal with surviving on $100 a day, or who have to work for 6 hours to produce a can of clean water. Polish women didn't have to deal with such problems. So in fact, they traded their comfort for freedom.
Yeah, that's true that we, I think so much were in the 90s focused on, there was a free market and that liberation, and everyone was excited about joining the West, but we didn't think about how our visual language, or how we, new language for new Poland, let's say. So that's why now we are, that's why now people, when they need some, they would like to be part of the community, they just refer to old cliches from 19th century, because we forgot about, culture. We just were so focused on business and free market that we forgot about that it's also important.
Certainly, the question of language, I remember repeating this, or perhaps just repeating it to myself, because at some point I think I thought that we were losing it at the beginning of the beginning of the new century. This wasn't even our choice. This was a choice of the ruling party, which was a civic platform at the time, which completely disregarded the issue of morality, perhaps waging the secular morality or non-religious morality, and the issue of language, somehow leaving this realms of possibility of creating symbolic representations, visual representations to their enemies.
Thinking about changing the anthem,
Oh,
so
we should controversial.
Who wants to change the anthem? I'm not following.
Yeah, that it would be maybe they should have about when Poland, let's say after 1989, we started as from the beginning, kind of we became free, like the communist bloc fall down, so that maybe we could have thought then about new Polish anthem.
Yeah, we are talking about language. I actually would like to circle back to this visual language that you are using in your paintings, because you've subverted the vision of 19th century Polonia, the weak, frail woman ready to be sacrificed, the personification of Poland, and reimagined it from the 21st century perspective, inviting amongst others, the BDSM narrative. You have transformed the suffering of Polonia into a tool of perhaps, tool with which she will regain her independence. Do you think that it was important to use such strong visual language to convey those ideas to the 21st century audience? This vivid colors, the invitation of different images from the internet, stock images, and so on.
Yeah, so I wanted to first of all, juxtapose that romantic nostalgia with strong, bold colors and dynamic composition. So I wanted to take that Polonia out, first of all, from this world. But I think there's still, in this series of painting, there's still, I'm some kind of ambiguity because she didn't become suddenly strong and powerful. It's only like a kind of like a game, and trying to change the meaning, put her into the 21st century, environment, using some motifs from pop culture to show also that maybe not much has changed, since those times. So it's still that symbol, like, woman as a sacrifice. It's still so much deep in our collective imagination that we maybe, we can use bright colors and, like different compositions and imagination, but the content is still almost untouched in a way.
And are you using this subversion as a tool of healing or a critical tool? And if it's critical, what are you actually criticizing? Is it the historical painting, the today's situation, the lack of agency in women, or something else?
I think that all of it, a bit of everything. And that sadomasochistic, aesthetics here is used as parodic metaphor for like Catholic patriarchal society, and it shows how the system imposes structures of dominance and submission. So that's why I used I refer to BDSM. And sorry, and what was the?
Was this a tool for healing from this intergenerational trauma, or a critical tool?
Yes, both. I think a bit of, for sure there's a bit of maybe even healing. Maybe, I know it would be good, but yeah, just for me, just to, pick up the challenge. It was a challenge for me to start even that topic, because I knew already in the 90s a lot of there was like a Polish critical art that was already engaging with the subjects. So I was thinking maybe it would be too much, maybe already. But then I thought that no, this, as I said, we are in a different context, and this is also painting. So it's, it's still important to take this challenge and to start, trying to play with that, and to weaken also those strong patriarchal symbols, to weaken them by just playing around, playing with them, and show it that it's maybe not so serious, and that everyone can play with them, and then change the context, change the meaning.
I think this element of humor, they are in a way funny at the first stand, are very, very important to find the language. If we talk about language of how to start, we have to start from scratch, how to start the deconstruction. But if I can just from a little while go back to what we started with, and we started with with women. It's not whether the women are guilty or not, whether the freedom is wasted or not. I wanted to talk a little bit about those 30 years of our freedom, let's say after 89, and of this kind of contemporary modern freedom, because it is very important to know that there was moment like 1990 is the beginning of our millennium, when there was a lot of wonderful energy, and we have Izabela Morska, which is for me the author of one of the most important book of the 1990s, the Absolutna Amnesia, where it was such a strong, there was such a potential of deconstruction, of let's look at what solidarity was from the feminist point of view, from a women's point of view. And I think it is very important to remember that Polish women did not waste it, that there was a lot of potentiality society. It's just that what Polish women are guilty of, that they didn't realize how strong is Polish patriarchy. That this, and also how inscribed on our bodies, on our cultures are our Polonias, how much Polonias we are. And among this, within this Polonia context, is also the fact that we are mothers, carers, but also Polish women are this strongly, I think even genetically thinking this way, okay, I will let you do now this, when the war stops, I will secure my business. And that it was a big mistake, that that certain things cannot be undone. The fact that Polish women did not go on the demonstration, on the complete trying to ban the 1993 anti-abortion law, that later on with the going to of the radicalization of the politics of the there was some sort of still feeling that, okay, if the plenipotentiary for rights or the equality between women and men is taken away from the government, okay, well, something will definitely be, because the European Union, there was a lot of thinking that it cannot go so badly, and also, but at the same time, we didn't see that patriarchy is doing so well without democracy in Poland. The democracy in Poland is male democracy, and then it was shown so well when it was a black protest in 2016, and there was whole Poland, black women, the women who didn't even want to have pro-abortion or law, just didn't want this radicalization of abortion law. Actually, in fact, getting rid of any excuses of any possibilities of having an abortion, it was completely ignored. And there was no possibility actually to see it in this kind of so clearly how strongly how strong is Polish patriarchy, how Polish patriarchy is doing so well, and it has this strong connection with the Polish church, which is with Polish church, which seems to be complete mad. It feels like complete madness, total ridiculous in its anti-gender, anti-homophobic, often anti-Semitic discourses, which feels like we are still in the 19th century. That is probably the fault of Polish women. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that we actually see that those 1990s, and Izabela can talk about it, but 1990s, the way how the movement that was Jaruga Nowacka, Magdalena Środa, there was this moment of let them see us, niech nas zobaczą. There was a lot of fantastic artworks. We had in Katarzyna Kozyra, who was from the very beginning destroying our national discourses. There was a lot of that. It's just that we thought, and I don't know whether Izabela agrees, but we thought that we are in the normal country, that it cannot be as bad as it is, that the church is in the decrease. We were maybe blind on how, blinded by the secular modernist discourses. and that is probably our fault. But at the same time, there is so much wasted, and we talk about wasted freedom, but there is so much wasted energy. But I hope that this energy that has been there and still is, we have this exhibition. There is a lot of artists that builds there. There are a lot of wonderful writers that explain to us the situation, like including obviously Izabela. So hopefully everything will come back to some sort of freedom and feeling of the freedom. So that this is my little optimistic tone from this.
Well, I certainly remember this sense of agency that we used to have at the turn of centuries, the end of the 90s, beginning of the new century, and the sense that we were creating a new culture, new society in which it would feel safe and pleasant and comfortable and creative to just be and expand. I think that part of it was that, however you want to call the opposition, the enemy, patriarchy, perhaps, that the other side was not prepared and didn't quite know what to do with it or how to respond. So it took a while for us to build structures and to even find out what our set of personal metaphors, what these are about. At the same time, I also remember that we indeed hoped that Poland's entrance to European Union will be the point from which this new society, a safe and comfortable society, and a society perhaps geared towards happiness, personal happiness, and happiness of communities. So I would be talking about utilitarian model if someone asked me what model of society I embrace. I say utilitarianism. Personal happiness reflected in the happiness of my close community and happiness of my country. So we are hoping that we will be just simply naturally progressing, and the civil freedoms will be grounded and performed. We certainly didn't expect the backlash that was built precisely at the time when Poland was about to enter European Union. And I also have a feeling not to create conspiracy theories that we are dealing with forces that are stronger than us. Perhaps the narrative is not only about us and Polish patriarchy, because the same tendencies we observe in the US, in Brazil, and in Putin's Russia, and in the rest of the Eastern Europe, including Hungary and Serbia, Croatia. These patterns of nationalistic movements raising and being homophobic and sexist at the same time, like these new incel cultures, these we also see repeated, reiterated in various countries of Eastern Europe. So these forces may be actually bigger than us and bigger than Poland itself. Should I pass? Is it someone else?
Would you like to add anything before I move on to the next question? Because I actually, Urszula already mentioned about something positive, and I actually have one kind of positive question for us, and that is, what are the strategies of breaking away from this patriarchal vision of Polonia? And do you think, Małgosia, that your exhibition, your project constitutes a blueprint to find new ways of freedom, to kind of talk about our title from the other perspective, because it's very ambiguous. It's wasted freedom or waste freedom. So now let's talk about the ways that we can actually achieve this freedom.
Yeah.
Is there any way, and what do you think? How do you think we should definitely carry on talking about it? But
I think that slowly we waste. Definitely, those are some. Also, talking about the subjects, like getting some distance towards it, thinking about it from a different point of view, it already helps us to break through and like go somewhere and to get somewhere else. And I also wanted to engage wider audience and try to. That's why I, chose some motifs from pop culture. And so to engage wider audience, and to I wanted to invite people for conversation, because I think that's the most important, that we don't close in our bubbles and we all know what we think and we agree with each other, but that we go outside our bubbles and try to somehow talk to each other. And way out, for sure, I believe that this backlash that we're experiencing now, it's not gonna last forever. Unfortunately, maybe it has to go even worse before it's gonna. But this is for me like that scream of patriarchy, that it feels that, okay, we are
the
losing.
beast that's falling.
Yes, the beast that's falling. Like they feel like, okay, we're losing it. We're losing that power that we had for hundreds of years, and they are like really, scared, and that's why now we have this experience, the backlash all over the world. But this is gonna pass, and I believe in reason. I think reasoning, and it's only way out, because what populism is something, using that irrationality in masses. We can easily influence masses, because also through internet and with all the fake news and so on. So there, in reason, there's only, I think.
But I remember you have a tiny addition, which is an optimistic one, to my monologue or my remembrance of the late 90s. I think what we've created since then are intergenerational links and perhaps a bit more diversity, which is something that we didn't have in the 90s, because even if we knew writers, let's say, from the 80s, like brilliant ones like Anna Bojarska, they debuted and they operated in a completely different context. So it was difficult to translate their experience into this new democratic reality that we were trying to put in it, recreate and expand at the same time. So at this moment, I imagine that people who come after us, who are debuting right now or who will be debuting in 20 years, they can look back at us, and however dreadful, terrible, wonderful it is going to be, they can create links, imaginary links or actual links with us and with our experience from the 90s and the experience that follows. So, and on the other hand, it might also become the response to the other side, because some of these accusations were, you are a foreign implant, whereas we are not a foreign implant. We are here and we are creating connections with, with people who continue or who come up with their own wonderful, amazing ideas, and who are going to continue striving towards the ideals similar to the ones that we have, or even surprise us with some new solutions. So it is interesting to be part of intergenerational link that has not been so far interrupted, say, by a terrible war, a terrible tragedy, the way it was in the first part of the 20th century, where people, artists, thinkers, philosophers also tried to create their own communities, but these communities were interrupted. So far, we haven't been.
Yes, and thanks to the internet, I guess we have this kind of momentum that was not available to those generations before, because now everything that's online cannot be deleted, it's there. So there is this memory, collective memory that you were talking about as well.
But yeah, and then also we can communicate with each other, and that's also,
Yeah, it's very interesting topic actually about this. What does transnationalism and transnational connections actually gave us? Because there are two. Again, we can go to positive, optimist or positive or pessimist notion. Because from there is a possibility that the women movement or feminist movement at the end of the 90s or the beginning of the 2000s, especially when there was this introduction to gender mainstreaming policy in Poland, we kind of concentrate more on university, kind of elitist discussion, and we thought probably too much that that it's obvious that gender mainstreaming will go down, and that there was a lot of fight for school, that school, primary school, the one that and there was a strong, there was never a strong proposals of changing the curricula, of showing that we have to change the discourse, the national discourse. I think it has been traditionally quite difficult to get rid of romanticism and romantic ideas on the basis of which today discussion is because Polonia is this kind of neo-romanticism, and the notion which is still falls on discussion about Poland, which regain the independence. And we still have to, year after year, on the 11th of November, we remember this, and we fear of our independence as if we are all the time threatened by some sort of calamity. Exactly. So we kind of taking part in this discussion all the time, even wanted to deconstruct it. So maybe schools should be, we actually should talk about it, how to go to the school. And you created wonderful, Malgorzata and Izabela, wonderful book for children about the Kocia Rodzina, the cat's family, about women, the alternative women, the lesbian women. This is what we need. We need discourses that will break out the heteronormativity, romanticism, and this discourse of suffering, the discourse of complete vulnerable states that is always on the, as the desire of other states just to come and occupy. This has to change. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, I will go a little bit more optimistic, that, well, I think, we here and we have wonderful works that deconstruct in the very nice way those iconic works that creates the romantic idea of Polish women. And when I look at one of them, for example, Polonia przed ołtarzem, Polonia at the altar, and I see this, deconstructing this Matejko painting, chained Poland, and at the same time, you actually creating already a transnational context, because you, as you say, you use the Red Room that is connected to Twin Peaks, popular culture, popular imagination. You put a lot of different symbols that evokes or refers to our psyche, our subconscious, actually telling us that there is also national subconscious, and we have to go to the therapy, as everyone that is has some sort of post-traumatic syndrome. And this is really super nice, because I think optimistically art today should actually go towards this way, towards the way of being a little bit having some sort of art as the visual activism. This is how I see it, as the activism for, kind of through the performance, make those discourses a little bit unable to be so serious, make it unable to be, enable them to be mainstream discourses. So, and I do really feel that all kind of forms of the performative activism or humorous, subversive forms are able to undermine the mainstream politics. However, the mainstream politics are awfully real, and we had it last week when whole Poland was on the demonstration against the death of a woman who was denied the abortion, and it was a horrible moment, because those demonstration was the demonstration of people who did not feel any kind of agency, and people that came there as in the gesture of mourning. And this is what, but hopefully from this, after mourning, is this come the notion of, well, we have to secure our safety. There has to be country that is safe, and that is this is what I hope. And this is where, after the construction, I see the moment of that there is I see the chance of optimism. Hopefully.
Well, symbolically speaking, perhaps, but Malgorzata's paintings are also taking me back, or have taken me into this journey into the past. And so as I looked back at the time when these first images of Polonia were created, following the November Uprising, in fact, of 1830, it became obvious to me, perhaps because I also read books on Polish kingdom's economy the time preceding the uprising. It came to me that first of all, we are in a very similar moment, because the economy of Polish kingdoms was failing due to some tremendous mismanagement, and also the fear of liberating the peasants from serfdom, at the same time protecting the landowners. So backing or being truly regressive on all kinds of necessary measures that never been taken. And also mismanaging the country seemed to be the ongoing issue. And these issues needed to be addressed, just like inflation today. But instead of them being addressed, Poland produced the November Uprising. That November Uprising that was mismanaged again, just as well as, or as badly as the country itself was mismanaged. Uprising failed, so this was obviously a great national tragedy. So then what happened, and I'm not sure actually this was so good. This turned out so well if major Polish poets contributed to creating the myth of Polish suffering instead of actually examining what happened before. So it seems that this great romantic art and this visual imagination, visual imagery was in fact just added to the smoke screen that protected the terrible economic mismanagement of this country and its overall backwardness and its the inability of the ruling class to address the issue of serfdom. Forever, till the end of the 19th century, we were just drowning in national myths. So it is interesting that we can actually use these myths and reuse them for our benefit, even like symbolic benefit, if symbolic representations are all that we have left, since we don't have any real representation in the parliament. So at least we have symbolic representations. Oh, but that's indeed, that's optimistic. But yes, the issue of economic mismanagement, the issue of backwardness, in terms of the social issues need to be addressed and never being addressed by Polish political representatives, by people who actually were in power and who were able to produce these changes. This area this is the area that we should never forget.
Yeah, and I think that, Małgosia, you are kind of revisiting all those areas in your attitude towards creating, because you said you were heavily inspired by the idea of xenofeminism. Would you like to tell us more about it?
I can try. So when I was, when I think where to go, what's next after we deconstruct all the symbols, and let's say, I also wanted to mention that unreliable narrator. That's what Ula suggested, that I could be one of the unreliable narrator, and how much freedom it gives, because you can actually revisit the past, and you can reclaim the past by taking something and juxtaposing it with, creating those puzzles and do it in a more creative and imaginary ways. So this unreliable narrator gives that base, that freedom, that then after we can imagine something new. Maybe we could come up with some utopian vision and think about, what would fit feminism for 21st century, and thinking about globalization, technology, things that are at the moment threatening us, but we can repurpose, we can reclaim it, reappropriate technology and repurpose it for our benefits, for equality, basically, and not to let only patriarchy and the men to control all those achievements that we have in science or technology, but just to reclaim it and use it. So maybe that's something optimistic.
Yeah, it seems like there's lots of unlearning to be done in terms of this freedom that we are fighting for, kind of to change the perspective a little bit and think that maybe perhaps we should be focusing more on fighting for freedom instead of freedom from.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's what struck me quite a lot in our discussion today, but also generally about discussion. That we definitely have this moment of so what again coming to that there is some sort of complete. The moment we are surprised, and it's absolutely, as Izabela says, on the global level, that the feminism seems to be on one hand like failing in the backlash, and hashtag Me Too movement actually shows that it's like, sexism, patriarchy is really, really strong, and it's fine, and it's don't worry, everything the old world is doing. There was a lot of ferment, but still there was at the same time a lot of feeling, isn't it that hashtag Me Too movement actually victimizing women? So in a sense, there is a clear some sort of crisis of the of feminist identity, of the women's identity, of the women's movement identity, and that. So in this way, I think it's a very important moment to see that perhaps the traditional ideas of thinking, we have to start the grassroots movement. We need to, be more increase visibility, increase, our participation, civic participation. Maybe it doesn't really work this way. Maybe there are other ways to deal with this, and maybe, kind of subversive way of dealing with this in terms of being a little bit unreliable as an unreliable narrator, and I really feel like we need to have the history of literature. Let it be not as it was, but the history of literature when there are only women, when the courses, the ideas, when we have a discussion, we are all women today, and there is no feeling of any we are not apologetic, but and this is what we need to do, to be to a little bit reclaim the spaces without really getting into the same discussion, without really being in a way even a little bit uncomfortable with this. And unfortunately, the world is not as comfortable as even it was 10 years ago. We talk about privately. We talk about the also radicalization of the academic discourse, that anti-gender discourse, which is not official discourse. It just slowly, decreasing of the subjects that deals with gender, or people telling, if you propose the new course, let it not be. Let it not have the word gender within, and even in not away from Poland. And I've been away from Poland for majority and longer majority of my life, every year a little bit longer, and still I am like, if you deal, Jewish literature, why is it not only Jewish women's literature? Let's maybe include, and that we have to be stubborn on saying, okay, maybe it's the old feminist discourse, but we have to make sure that we still have a very strong standpoint. So I'm a little bit sometimes again skeptical when someone says, well, maybe we need to be more exclusive. Maybe it's the fourth, fifth, or whatever wave of feminism. Maybe the feminist, it's generally exclusive movement, while in fact there is all kind of sign that tells us Well, we are in the second wave. There is a lot of second wave goals still to achieve. So in this way, I think this Polonia and you exhibition shows us there is a lot to do. Let's have fun during the deconstruction, but don't remember that there is a huge and very important agenda.
Thank you.
Well, I just find the concept, the way you put it, Ola, the concept of unreliable narrator, as applied to our daily practice, so liberating, because well, I tend to be a responsible person. To be responsible is a burden, especially in the surroundings where nobody is responsible anymore for anything. In a country where nobody is responsible for anything, all of a sudden you're supposed to be the only person responsible. And it is a question of making mistakes, even if you create these patchworks of images and ideas. The simple answer being, so what? Because once created, it becomes a reality, a symbolic reality that has power to generate other symbolic realities. And this has been happening over centuries, starting with, who knows, Christmas, like Christmas being one great appropriation, and perhaps the utmost case of narrative unreliability. And who cares? And it works together with Christmas tree. So there. But I'm also putting hope in people whom we didn't have 20 years ago, like straight allies, people who support LGBT cause when they are not the LGBT spectrum in any way. But we just are insulted by the government's responses, say, to the issue, and they want to counteract it. They are acting out of their conscience. Or people like Ronan Farrow, who actually support the Me Too movement, or guys who are feminist and who understand that feminism is actually not entirely inclusive, and it doesn't have to be. And you can support women, support feminism without, well, even as amazingly well being guy. So that's encouraging, and that's new, and these are interesting areas of expansion when the world is closing down on us.
Yes. We're discussing this for ages because there are so many threads we've started at, and it would be amazing to follow. I have so many questions, but unfortunately this is all the time we've had scheduled for today. So Malgorzata, do you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No, I think maybe there are some questions from the audience. We can, any questions? If there's no questions, we will be posting this on Facebook and Instagram later, and we encourage to everybody who is watching the replay to just post their questions in the comments, and we will contact Izabela and Ula, and we can continue on the conversation. I just wanted to mention that the exhibition is open till the 25th of November, and it's in Birmingham, Centrala space, so everybody who's able to come down to Birmingham, we encourage strongly. Yes.
And thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Well done. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, Ula and Izabela, for taking part.
It was a pleasure. It is a series of fantastic paintings and a lot of fun, I have to say.
We never spoke about this kind of combination of patriotism and feminism. That was very interesting.
Absolutely. And
No more time. I think we should schedule another hour's conversation. talk about
what are the possibilities of being a feminist and wearing the T-shirt "I'm a patriot"? it feels just like not the right thing, but maybe. And it's like, when I come to Sweden, it was one of my experience of I'm in Sweden, and whatever happens once a month happens that everybody putting the flags around, and it is everybody, and they and I'm thinking, what's happening? Is it such a nationalistic country? And it's supposed to be secular and open, etc. But it has completely different attitude to flag and to patriotic. It's something has nothing to do with nationalism. So it can be somehow cool, but
yeah, but still you have like mugs with Union Jack on and stuff like this. It's not that you're not scared of somebody who's approaching you wearing a Union Jack on their T-shirt. If in Poland, I would be a little bit scared.
Not yet.
At least not in London. I don't know about smaller places, but yeah. And also there's all the question of how the bad press of feminism in Poland, because that's like another topic for discussion. What is this feminism? Why are we also scared of it? Because, even when you say you're a feminist, when I ask people my age, whether they are feminists or not, they say, no, I'm not. Why are you asking? This is like another question. But yeah, thank you very much. And I guess we have to go. Yeah. So thank you.
It was wonderful to be part of this. It's good to see you all, and good luck. Have fun at the exhibition.
Yeah, thank you. And
thank you for inviting me as well, and good luck to the paintings, because they begin to live their own life now. They are independent, independent from the creator almost.
Yes, I have to let them go now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.